everyone, and welcome back to our podcast. I'm Elif, and today we have a fascinating topic to explore. It's something that millions of people are passionate about, and it unites cultures all over the world. Yes, we're talking about football or soccer, depending on where you're listening from. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Mertz. Hi, Mertz.
Hi, Elif. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited about this episode because football is not just a sport, it's almost like a universal language. But today, instead of talking about current matches or famous players, we're actually going to take a step back in time and answer a big question. How was football invented?
Exactly. When we watch modern football, the stadiums, the fans, the rules, the clubs, it feels like such a well-structured, modern game. But actually, the roots of football go back thousands of years, and they are surprisingly diverse.
Yeah, that's what makes it fascinating. People in different parts of the world were kicking balls long before FIFA existed, long before the Premier League, even long before medieval Europe. The story of football's invention is really the story of humanity's love for games and competition.
So let's start with the earliest evidence. One of the oldest known ball games that resembles football was played in ancient China, about 2,000 years ago. It was called Cuju, which literally means kickball.
Yes, and Cuju was recognized by FIFA as the earliest form of football. The game involved kicking a leather ball through an opening into a net, but you couldn't use your hands, only your feet, chest, back, and shoulders. Doesn't that sound familiar?
Very familiar. It's fascinating because Cuju was played during the Han Dynasty. Around the 2nd century BC, it wasn't just a casual game either. It was used for military training, and later it became a form of entertainment at royal courts.
And interestingly, there were referees too. So even back then, people were worried about fairness in the game.
That's right. And while China had Cuju, other civilizations had their own versions of ball games. For example, in ancient Greece, there was a game called Episkouros, which was more physical, sometimes even violent. And the Romans adapted it into something called harpastum.
Exactly. Harpastum involved two teams trying to keep control of a small ball and pass it across boundaries. It wasn't identical to modern football, but the concept of teamwork, passing, and territory control was already there.
Now, if we jump forward to medieval Europe, we see something very different. During the Middle Ages, people played what we call folk football, and let me tell you, it was wild.
Oh yes, folk football was basically a chaotic game played between entire villages. The goals could be miles apart, and hundreds of people could participate. There were almost no rules.
Right. The only rule was to get the ball to a specific location, maybe a church door, or a tree in the next village. And everything else was allowed. Punching, kicking, tackling. It was more like a riot than a sport. And because it was so violent, kings and governments often tried to ban it. For example, in 1314, King Edward II of England issued a proclamation banning football in London because it caused so much chaos. But despite the bans, people kept playing. It was just too much fun, and it was part of local traditions. So folk football survived for centuries.
Now, let's fast forward to the 19th century. This is where football begins to take the shape we recognize today. And the turning point was the English public schools.
Yes, schools like Eton, Harrow, Rugby, and Westminster all had their own versions of football. Each school had slightly different rules. In some, you could carry the ball. In others, you could only kick it.
And this is actually how the split between football and rugby happened. At rugby school, students decided carrying the ball was allowed. That later evolved into rugby. But at other schools, the focus was on kicking, and that led to modern football.
In 1863, things became official. The Football Association was founded in London, and they created the first standardized rules of football. This is why we often say that modern football was born in England.
Exactly. And those rules specifically banned carrying the ball with hands. That's why rugby and football became two separate sports. The rules also introduced things like the size of the pitch, the number of players, and the use of a referee.
Now, you might wonder, how did football spread so quickly around the world? The answer is the British.
Yes, British sailors, merchants, and soldiers carried football with them to different parts of the globe. In the late 19th century, football clubs were founded in places like South America, Africa, and Asia.
For example, the first football club in Argentina, Buenos Aires Football Club, was established by British immigrants in 1867, and in Brazil, the sport was introduced by Charles Miller, who studied in England and brought the game back with him.
And in Europe, too, countries like Spain, Italy, and Germany quickly embraced football. By the early 20th century, football had become a truly global game.
So, what happened next? Well, in 1904, FIFA, the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, was founded in Paris. Its goal was to oversee international competition.
Yes, and that was the beginning of football as we know it today. Just a few decades later, in 1930, FIFA organized the first World Cup in Uruguay. Only 13 teams participated, but it was a huge success.
And from that point onwards, the World Cup became the most prestigious football tournament in the world. Today, billions of people watch it every 4 years. It's the single most watched sporting event on the planet.
But football is more than just a sport, right? It's a culture. It reflects identity, politics, and community.
Absolutely. Think about it. Football unites people across languages, religions, and borders. But at the same time, it can also create intense rivalries. For example, El Clasico in Spain, Real Madrid versus Barcelona, is not just a football match. It's tied to history, politics, and regional pride.
And then there are incredible stories of how football influenced history. Like during World War I, when soldiers on both sides of the Western Front stopped fighting for a day and played football on Christmas Eve. That's known as the Christmas Truce of 1914.
Yes, such a powerful story. Football is often described as the world's game, and I think it's because it's so simple. All you need is a ball and some space. That's why it spread everywhere.
So, to sum up, football wasn't invented in one place or at one moment. It evolved through centuries, from tuju in China to harpastum in Rome to chaotic folk football in medieval Europe, and finally to the codified game created in 19th century England.
Exactly, and today it's more than just a sport. It's passion, it's identity, it's global culture. When we watch a football match, we're not just seeing 22 players on a pitch, we're seeing thousands of years of history coming together.
Well said, Elif. And that's the beautiful story of how football was found, shaped, and shared with the world.
Thank you all for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed traveling through history with us. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know which part of football's history surprised you the most. See you in the next episode. Bye!